If everything you ever wanted was finally within your reach, would you risk it all to save the person you once loved, even if it meant destroying your own perfect world in front of everyone? The champagne sparkled beneath the golden light of 1,000 crystal chandeliers, filling the grand ballroom of the Beverly Hills Hotel with an intoxicating sense of luxury and promise. Laughter and music floated through the air, blending with the gentle clinking of glasses and the distant murmur of the string quartet playing something timeless. It was a night meant for celebration, perfection in every detail. But in a single, shattering instant, everything changed, and nothing would ever be the same. Ryan Mitchell, the groom, sat at the head table beside his new bride, Vanessa Brooks. His hand rested confidently atop Vanessa's, their rings gleaming together for the cameras. Ryan was a man who had always gotten what he wanted. Tech mogul, millionaire before 30, famous for building his empire from nothing. He looked out over the ballroom and saw a sea of power. Celebrities, CEOs, politicians, and old money, all gathered for what was already being called the wedding of the year. Vanessa, radiant in a custom Vera Wang gown, laughed easily, her arm curled around Ryan's. She was the very picture of elegance and confidence, a socialite, an heiress, and the final piece in Ryan's meticulously constructed life. The press would later call her flawless. But Ryan's mind wasn't entirely on Vanessa, or even on the endless congratulations being offered. His eyes kept drifting, against his will, to the far end of the ballroom. She was there, his ex-wife, Emily. He'd seen her the moment she entered, though she tried to stay in the background, moving quickly between tables in the black and white uniform of the catering staff. Her hair was pulled into a neat bun, a few wisps escaping to frame a face that was hauntingly familiar. She was thinner than he remembered, paler. But her eyes were unmistakable, even from a distance. Soft, brown, and deeply wounded. She was also visibly pregnant. Ryan's heart lurched the first time he realized it. The gentle curve of her belly, outlined beneath the starched fabric of her apron, sent a shock through him he couldn't explain. Questions raced through his mind, sharp and endless. Was it his? How could she be here tonight at his wedding? Had she come to ruin him? Or was this all some cruel coincidence? The universe seemed to pause for a moment, holding its breath. Guests, blissfully unaware of the quiet storm brewing at the edge of their perfect party, continued to toast, gossip, and dance. Vanessa's friends clustered around the dance floor, their laughter echoing off the marble columns. Photographers jockeyed for the best angle of the happy couple. No one paid any attention to the staff, especially not to the small, pregnant woman clearing plates. But Ryan couldn't look away. He watched Emily as she worked her way from table to table, her hands trembling slightly, her steps slow. At one point, their eyes met across the room. For a split second, the years and the pain fell away. He remembered everything. The late nights building his business with Emily's gentle support, the simple dinners they used to share in their tiny apartment, her smile when he'd made his first million. That memory was now a ghost between them, haunting and unspoken. The night wore on, and the tension in the room grew almost imperceptibly thick. A sense of destiny crackled in the air, invisible to everyone but Ryan and Emily. He tried to focus on Vanessa, tried to lose himself in the celebration, but the past would not be ignored. When Emily came near the head table to collect empty glasses, Ryan's pulse hammered. Vanessa squeezed his hand possessively, misreading his discomfort as nerves. Then it happened. Emily had just bent to pick up a dropped fork near the main dance floor when her face went white. She paused, clutching her belly. Time slowed, the world shrinking to that single, breathless moment. Emily swayed, her eyes wide and unfocused. The tray slipped from her hands, crashing to the floor with a sound that cut through the music and laughter like a siren. Glass shattered. Heads turned. Before anyone could react, Emily crumpled to her knees, then collapsed entirely, her body folding, her arms wrapped around her stomach in a desperate, instinctive gesture. For one horrible second, nobody moved. The shock was total, as if the entire room had been punched in the gut. Then chaos erupted. Vanessa shrieked, rising from her chair, her voice shrill with panic. Guests surged from their seats, a wave of confusion and concern sweeping the dance floor. Ryan stood frozen, every muscle locked, his mind racing through a fog of fear, guilt, and something else, something raw and protective. Emily's coworkers rushed to her side, shouting for help, someone calling for an ambulance. A hush fell as the crowd parted around her, guests gawking, some filming on their phones. The band stopped playing. The illusion of perfection was shattered. The wedding transformed into a spectacle of pain and uncertainty. Ryan broke free from Vanessa's grip, pushing through the crowd, his heart pounding as he reached Emily. He dropped to his knees beside her, ignoring the looks and whispers, reaching out to touch her cheek. Her skin was clammy, her eyes fluttering closed, lips moving in silent terror. "Emily, stay with me," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Help is coming. You're going to be okay." As the sirens wailed in the distance and the entire ballroom stood transfixed by the spectacle, Ryan's mind whirled with 1,000 regrets. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not his money, not the cameras, not even his beautiful new wife standing frozen behind him. All he saw was the woman he'd once loved, the woman now suffering in front of him, carrying a child whose very existence threatened to unravel everything he thought he wanted. The night that began as a fairy tale had become a nightmare. And for Ryan Mitchell, this was only the beginning of the reckoning. A hospital hallway at midnight feels like the loneliest place in the world. Fluorescent lights flicker overhead, the floors are scrubbed too clean, and the only sounds are distant beeps and the low, urgent voices of nurses shuffling by. Emily Taylor lay in her hospital bed, pale and exhausted, an IV dripping steadily into her arm. A fetal monitor beeped quietly beside her, tracking the tiny, determined heartbeat inside her womb. She had barely regained consciousness, but the world had already come rushing back. The wedding, the collapse, the humiliation of it all. For most of the guests who'd witnessed the drama, Emily was just the catering girl, the one who ruined the party. They didn't know her story, didn't know her heart. But once, not so long ago, Emily had been more than just another face in the crowd. She had always been the quiet, thoughtful one, an only child raised by her single mother in a small California town where everybody knew everybody else. Money was tight, but love was never in short supply. Emily learned the value of hard work early, spending summers helping her mom at the local library, then working part-time at the bakery through high school. She was the girl who brought soup to sick neighbors, the one who painted murals at the community center for free, the kind who remembered every birthday and baked cookies for every school event. After graduating, Emily studied art and education at a state college, then became an elementary school teacher, a job she adored, even if it barely paid the bills. She taught second grade, loving every chaotic minute, glue on her shoes, crayon masterpieces taped to her classroom walls, laughter echoing through her days. She lived for the little moments, the way a child's face lit up when they finally understood something new, or when they trusted her with their secrets and fears. Her life changed forever when she met Ryan Mitchell. She hadn't been looking for love, least of all with a man like him. He was brash, ambitious, a big ideas guy from the city with a startup dream and a backpack full of investor pitch decks. Their worlds collided at a charity auction, where Emily was volunteering and Ryan was trying to charm donors for his fledgling company. She had spilled punch on his suit, then apologized so sincerely that he'd laughed for the first time in days. After that, they were inseparable. Ryan swept her into his whirlwind life, promising the stars. Dinners turned into late-night strategy sessions at their kitchen table, cheap pizza and big dreams, as he confided in her his fears and hopes. Emily was the patient listener, the gentle encouragement behind his ambition. He'd call her his good luck charm, saying that every time she smiled, another deal came through. They were married at City Hall, just the two of them and a handful of friends. No fancy dress, no limo, just love and laughter and a promise to stand together no matter what came. Emily didn't care about money or status. She cared about the man she believed Ryan could be, and for a while she thought they had it all. But as Ryan's tech company exploded in value, life got complicated. Success changed him. Board meetings, investor dinners, endless travel. A new world she never quite fit into. She went from being his partner to his shadow, always waiting, always understanding. Sometimes she'd wake up alone in their huge, echoing house, wondering where the man she'd married had gone. Still, Emily tried to keep their life together. She hosted dinner parties for his colleagues, organized charity events, even learned to make small talk with venture capitalists and socialites. She never complained when he missed anniversaries or birthdays. She believed in him. She believed in them. But it was never enough for Ryan. Not once his company's values soared and his phone wouldn't stop ringing. He started to see Emily as someone holding him back. She didn't fit his new life, he said. She wasn't ambitious enough, glamorous enough, not the trophy wife he wanted to show off at the galas. The final blow came in the form of Vanessa Brooks, the daughter of one of Ryan's top investors. Vanessa was beautiful, charming, ruthless, a woman who knew how to play every angle. Emily felt her marriage slipping away, saw the change in Ryan's eyes when he looked at Vanessa. Still, she tried to fight for him, for their love. But in the end, Ryan pushed her out, asking for a break that turned into a separation, then a divorce, all finalized without drama or even a proper goodbye. Only Emily knew the secret she carried. Just days after signing the divorce papers, she found out she was pregnant. At first, she tried to tell Ryan, but every phone call went unanswered, every text ignored. She left voicemails that were never returned. She wrote a letter, pouring her heart out, but it came back unopened. It became clear that Ryan had shut the door on his old life for good. She was alone. The months that followed were a blur of exhaustion and survival. Emily left the big house, returned to teaching, but quickly realized she needed more money. She found herself working 2, sometimes 3 jobs, teaching during the day, waitressing at night, picking up odd catering gigs on weekends just to pay for prenatal vitamins and rent. She sold her car, moved into a tiny studio, and cut every corner she could. She told no one about her pregnancy, not wanting pity. She was determined to raise her baby with dignity, no matter how hard it got. Now, lying in a hospital bed, she stared at the ultrasound image taped to the wall beside her, a grainy picture of hope. She hadn't wanted to work the wedding that night, but the bills were overdue and she couldn't say no. Seeing Ryan with Vanessa had been like a punch to the heart, but she'd forced herself to keep going, to stay invisible, to finish her shift. But her body had other plans. The stress, the exhaustion, the heartbreak, it was too much. Now, everything was uncertain. Her health, her future, her child's safety. Tears threatened, but she pushed them back. She'd made it this far. She'd keep fighting. Somewhere in the hall, she heard a nurse mention her name. She braced herself because soon the past and the present would collide again, and Emily would have to find out what she was truly made of. To understand how Emily and Ryan reached this breaking point, you have to rewind to the days when everything felt possible, when dreams outshined reality and heartbreak seemed like a distant threat. Their love story began, as so many do, with hope and a belief in forever. But nothing in life ever plays out like the fairy tales, not even the ones that start with the sweetest of intentions. Ryan Mitchell was nobody's idea of a fairy tale prince, but to Emily, he was perfect in the beginning. He had a wild spark in his eyes and a way of talking about the future that made her heart race. He made her believe she was part of something big, something rare. When they moved into their first apartment, a tiny one-bedroom walk-up with peeling paint and noisy pipes, they treated it like a castle. Emily painted the kitchen walls a sunny yellow. Ryan hung a cheap whiteboard by the door and scribbled goals and motivational quotes for both of them. They laughed about their leaky ceiling, danced in their socks on creaky floorboards, and made love with the abandon of people who had nothing but each other. Money was always tight, but Emily grew up knowing how to stretch a dollar and make a home out of anything. She clipped coupons, made meals from scratch, and never complained when the power bill ate up half her paycheck. Ryan was different. He saw their struggles as a challenge to conquer. He worked long hours, juggling odd jobs while coding late into the night, fueled by ramen noodles and big ideas. Emily would watch him from the couch, her sketchbook open, pride shining in her eyes. When he finally landed a small investment for his app, just a few $1,000s, she baked him a cake and made a banner out of printer paper. They celebrated like he'd won the lottery. Those early years were hard, but they were real. The world felt small and safe, and they clung to each other through every disappointment and every tiny victory. Emily never cared about the material things. She loved the man who made her laugh, who kissed her goodnight, who held her hand when she was scared. She believed that no matter how much money Ryan made or how high he climbed, he would never forget the girl who believed in him first. But ambition is a tricky thing. It can drive people to greatness, or it can hollow them out. When Ryan's company finally took off, everything changed. Investors poured in, and suddenly they went from counting every penny to living in a penthouse with a doorman and a view of the city. Emily should have been happy, but she could feel the ground shifting beneath her feet. Ryan thrived in this new world. He started wearing expensive suits, talking in buzzwords, throwing parties for people Emily barely knew. He loved the attention, the respect, the sense of power. Emily tried to adapt. She dressed up for the galas, memorized talking points, smiled at the wives of board members. But the more Ryan shined, the more she felt herself fading into the background. The first real crack appeared when Emily had her miscarriage scare. She hadn't told many people, just Ryan and her best friend from childhood. It was supposed to be the happiest news. She was pregnant. Ryan was shocked, but he smiled and told her they'd figure it out. Then, only a few weeks later, she woke up bleeding, terrified and alone, while Ryan was out at a business dinner. She called him sobbing, and he came home eventually, but his mind was elsewhere. He hugged her, said the right words, but the old warmth was missing. Emily could feel it, a wall growing between them. That night was a turning point. She tried to talk to Ryan about her fears, about the pain, but he brushed it aside. "We have to keep moving forward, Em," he told her, already focused on his next investor pitch. She felt invisible, like her grief was an inconvenience he didn't have time for. From then on, she kept her feelings to herself, swallowing her sadness and pretending everything was fine. The truth was, Ryan's ambition had become an obsession. He stopped coming home for dinner, choosing late-night meetings and after-parties over quiet nights in. He started criticizing Emily for not fitting in with his new friends, suggesting she was holding him back. He compared her to the glamorous women who now orbited his world. Women with designer clothes, perfect hair, and sharp elbows. He told her she should work on herself, as if love was conditional on her ability to play a role. Emily tried harder. She joined a yoga class, updated her wardrobe, learned how to network, but nothing she did was enough. Ryan was always distracted, always chasing something just out of reach. The apartment that once felt like a castle became a gilded cage, and Emily felt like a guest in her own life. Then came the ultimate betrayal, Vanessa Brooks. Ryan met her at a charity gala thrown by one of his new investors. Vanessa was everything Emily wasn't. Rich, confident, magnetic. She wore her privilege like armor, moving through the world as if it belonged to her. Ryan was drawn to her from the start, and it didn't take long for Vanessa to find her way into every part of their lives. She started consulting for Ryan's company, offering strategic advice, mentoring him. Emily saw the way Vanessa looked at Ryan, the way she whispered in his ear, the secretive texts and late-night calls. Ryan became distant, irritable, and soon after he asked Emily for space. He framed it as a break, but Emily knew the truth. She tried to save their marriage, but it was over. The divorce papers arrived quietly, delivered by courier, while Ryan was out of town with Vanessa for a business trip. Emily signed them with trembling hands, tears falling on the ink, her fairy tale ending in silence. Emily lost more than a husband that day. She lost the future she'd built her whole life around. The love story that began with so much hope had ended in betrayal and heartbreak. But what she didn't know yet was that her real journey, the one that would change everything, was only just beginning. Vanessa Brooks was born to dominate every room she entered. The daughter of real estate tycoon Charles Brooks and old money socialite Ellen Stanford Brooks, Vanessa had never heard the word no in her life. She had grown up with private jets, exclusive boarding schools, summers in the Hamptons, and the kind of ruthless confidence that made men fall at her feet and women either envy or fear her. She had mastered the art of getting what she wanted by the time she was 12, and what she wanted now was Ryan Mitchell. From the start, Vanessa saw Emily as an obstacle, nothing more. At their first meeting, during that infamous gala, she sized Emily up in one sweeping glance. Dowdy dress, uncertain posture, too earnest to survive in the circles Vanessa ruled. Vanessa's smile was warm, but her eyes were cold, calculating. She knew Ryan's company was about to blow up. and she wanted to be on the ground floor. With Ryan, she saw a golden opportunity for power, prestige, and maybe even something resembling love, if she could mold him to her liking. She started subtly, weaving herself into Ryan's professional life under the guise of being a strategic advisor. She took lunches with him that ran hours longer than necessary, offering business wisdom and stories about her own cutthroat family. She dropped hints about other women CEOs and how their partners always stood beside them at every event, projecting strength, and class. Vanessa had no use for humility or second chances. She only cared about victory. Ryan, flattered and hungry for respect from the elite, was drawn to Vanessa's world like a moth to flame. Emily saw it happening but felt powerless to stop it. The more she tried to talk to Ryan about their marriage, the more he withdrew, always too busy or too tired. The apartment filled with silence, punctuated by the sound of Vanessa's name on his lips during late-night phone calls. Vanessa amped up her campaign. She invited Ryan to exclusive parties where Emily was clearly not welcome, made snide comments about Emily's lack of style and sophistication, and went out of her way to suggest Ryan could do better. Behind closed doors, Vanessa offered Ryan escape, a life without baggage, without guilt, without the need to explain himself. She fed his ego, told him he was brilliant, visionary, unstoppable. Compared to the messy reality of a marriage with Emily, Vanessa was a fantasy, a promise of endless possibility. The first time Ryan spent the night at Vanessa's penthouse, he told himself it was just business. By the second time, he'd stopped making excuses. Vanessa was intoxicating, bold and unapologetic. She demanded attention and got it. She challenged Ryan, teased him, sometimes even mocked him, but always made him feel like he was the center of her world. With Vanessa, he could pretend the rest of his life, the life he'd built with Emily, was someone else's story. Emily, meanwhile, saw her marriage unravel in real time. Vanessa took over everything: the company, the social life, even the home. Emily found Vanessa's lipstick on Ryan's shirts, strange perfume lingering on their pillows, texts from V, lighting up Ryan's phone in the middle of the night. When she tried to confront him, Ryan brushed her off. "Don't be paranoid, Em. Vanessa just understands the world I live in." The distance between them grew wider with each passing day. The final humiliation came at a fundraiser hosted by Vanessa's family foundation. Emily had planned to attend as Ryan's wife, her first big event since the miscarriage scare. She wore her best dress, practiced her smile, and clung to hope. When she arrived, she was stopped at the entrance. "You're not on the list," the hostess said, looking her up and down as if she were a party crasher. Emily waited outside in the cold until she saw Ryan arrive, Vanessa on his arm, both of them laughing. They walked right past her as if she were invisible. Vanessa's eyes flickered with a wicked satisfaction. Ryan's never met hers. Emily went home that night and packed her bags. She left Ryan a note, simple and devastating: "I'm done fighting for someone who doesn't want to be found." A week later, Ryan filed for separation. Vanessa wasted no time taking Emily's place, moving into the penthouse, redecorating everything, even discarding the art and trinkets that Emily had collected over the years. She hosted new parties, posed for glossy magazines, and made sure the world knew she was the new queen of Ryan's empire. Emily's friends began to disappear, swept up in the new social order, afraid to risk their status. The city felt colder and meaner than ever. But Vanessa's cruelty didn't end with stealing Ryan. She made sure Emily's name was blacklisted from industry events, sent subtle threats to Emily's employer, and once even showed up at Emily's school to drop off a donation, making it clear who was in charge now. Emily, pregnant and alone, endured every blow in silence, refusing to beg for help or stoop to Vanessa's level. For Ryan, it was a slow realization that something was missing. Vanessa gave him everything he thought he wanted: prestige, access, excitement. But there were nights, after the parties died down and the city lights blurred outside the window, when he'd remember the way Emily laughed or how she'd stayed up late to talk him through his fears. Vanessa never asked about his dreams, only his next move. Emily, meanwhile, found herself starting over from nothing. The love she'd fought for was gone, and all she had left was her determination to protect her unborn child. She carried her heartbreak quietly, not knowing that the pain Vanessa and Ryan caused would one day become her greatest strength. Betrayal, it turned out, was not the end. It was the beginning of Emily's most unexpected journey, the path that would take her from humiliation to a kind of power she'd never imagined. The day of Ryan and Vanessa's wedding was more than just a ceremony. It was a declaration of victory. The Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom, transformed into a palace of white roses and gold, thrummed with anticipation and envy. Guests arrived in limousines, dressed to impress and eager to be seen at the most exclusive event of the year. The air was heavy with perfume, expensive cologne, and the unspoken thrill of power swirling just beneath the surface. Reporters jockeyed for a glimpse of the happy couple, and every guest imagined their own place in tomorrow's headlines. Vanessa was the star, gleaming like a diamond in her designer gown, every inch the heiress she was born to be. Her laughter rang out as she worked the room, gathering compliments like trophies. She had invited everyone who mattered, and a few she wanted to humiliate. The guest list was handpicked, a perfect blend of power brokers, socialites, and those who would be sure to talk about her for weeks to come. But even among the dazzling crowd, there was a tension in the air, a hint of something out of place. Staff bustled around, clearing glasses and keeping the show running. Most people ignored them, treating them as furniture, but Vanessa saw everything. She watched the catering staff with sharp, predatory eyes. When she caught sight of Emily, she paused just long enough for her lips to curl into a cruel little smile. Emily, dressed in the plain uniform of the staff, tried to make herself invisible. She moved carefully, balancing trays and glasses, feeling every eye in the room whenever she dared to lift her head. She had taken the job out of desperation, needing the extra money for her doctor's bills and rent. She'd almost said no to this particular shift, but the agency offered a bonus for last-minute help at such a high-profile event. She didn't know, until she walked in, that it was Ryan and Vanessa's wedding. The realization hit her like a slap, but by the time she recognized Vanessa's voice echoing through the hallway, it was too late to turn back. Pride and necessity fought inside her, but in the end, survival won. She kept her head down, focusing on her tasks, determined to make it through the night. Vanessa, of course, would never let her do that. She pulled Emily aside near the kitchen, her eyes glinting with malice. "What a surprise," she purred. "Didn't know they let just anyone work these events. Tell me, do you get hazard pay for handling broken dreams?" Her voice was sweet, but the words were poison. Emily forced herself to look Vanessa in the eye, refusing to flinch. "I'm just here to work," she replied softly, her dignity her last shield. "Of course you are," Vanessa sneered, glancing meaningfully at Emily's belly. "Let's hope you can make it through the night without another accident." She strutted away. Satisfied, the hours crawled by. Emily served drinks, cleared plates, and watched as Ryan and Vanessa posed for photos, danced their first dance, and soaked up the adoration of the crowd. She noticed the way Ryan's eyes sometimes wandered, the flashes of guilt or confusion that would cross his face whenever he caught a glimpse of her. But he never approached, never said a word. As the evening wore on, the gossip started. Vanessa's friends, tipsy on champagne, whispered cruel jokes about the help, making sure Emily was always within earshot. "Did you see her? Poor thing. Looks like she's going to pop. Must be hard to fall so far," one snickered. Another giggled. "Maybe she's hoping Ryan will take pity on her." As if. Emily kept moving, but each comment was a cut, another reminder of how far she'd fallen. She had once stood beside Ryan, proud and in love. Now she was an afterthought, an embarrassment, a servant at his wedding. The final humiliation came just after the cake was cut. Vanessa, her voice high and clear, called for the staff to gather for a photo with the couple. An unusual request, but Vanessa made it sound charming, inclusive. Emily knew what was coming but couldn't refuse. As the photographer snapped the shot, Vanessa wrapped an arm around Emily's shoulders, squeezing just a little too hard. "Smile for the camera, Emily. We want to remember everyone who helped make today so perfect," Vanessa whispered in her ear. The crowd laughed, thinking it was all in good fun. But Emily felt her knees buckle, the weight of humiliation and exhaustion finally breaking through her armor. Her vision blurred. A wave of dizziness swept over her, and she felt her body rebel. She reached out, grabbing the edge of a table for support, but her hands slipped. The laughter and music faded into a dull roar as the room spun. She could feel the baby kick, a desperate, frightened flutter. Then, before anyone could react, Emily collapsed. Glasses shattered. Voices shouted. The band screeched to a stop. Someone screamed. All the attention, all the cameras swung to Emily as she lay crumpled on the ballroom floor. Ryan, paralyzed with shock, finally moved, pushing through the crowd as Vanessa gasped in mock concern. It was a scene no one would forget. The once invisible woman, now center stage in the most painful way imaginable. Emily's co-workers rushed to her side, shouting for help. The ambulance siren in the distance was the final punctuation on the disaster. Ryan dropped to his knees, guilt and fear warring on his face. Vanessa watched, her expression unreadable. In that moment, the fairy tale crumbled for everyone. For Emily, it was the lowest point, the moment when she lost even the last shreds of privacy, forced to endure her suffering in front of everyone who had once cheered her downfall. But even as she faded into unconsciousness, a small part of her heart refused to give up. Sometimes the only way out of humiliation is through it, and sometimes the world's cruelty sets the stage for something no one can see coming. The world outside Emily's hospital window was tinted pink with the sunrise, but inside her room there was only the stale, stifling air of disappointment and despair. The beeping of the fetal monitor was steady but unnerving, a reminder that another heartbeat depended on her, one she couldn't afford to fail. She woke to the scratchy hospital blanket bunched around her legs, her mouth dry and her head pounding. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then, like a flood, it all came back. The wedding, the laughter, Vanessa's cruelty, the sting of 100 stares as she collapsed, the chaos, the shame. She'd always thought humiliation was a private thing, a silent ache you could hide. But now she realized sometimes it happened in the open, with the world watching and judging every fragile second. A nurse came in, kind-eyed and gentle, checking Emily's vitals and asking questions she'd already answered a dozen times. "The baby's okay," she said, smiling softly. "Just stress and exhaustion. You need rest and a lot less drama." Emily tried to smile back, but it felt like too much effort. When she was finally alone, her mind raced. All the little indignities of the past year, the eviction notice on her apartment door, the credit card bills marked overdue, the friends who slowly disappeared, rushed in, sharper than ever. She thought of her teaching job, the one place she'd felt useful, and how she'd been forced to leave after too many missed days for doctor's appointments and side jobs. She remembered the night she sold her engagement ring just to buy groceries, the tears she wiped away before anyone could see. The loneliness was the hardest part. Emily's mother had passed away 2 years before, her father long gone. She had no siblings, no one to call in the middle of the night except the baby growing inside her. Sometimes, when the world felt especially cruel, she whispered secrets to her unborn child, promises that she would keep them safe, no matter how much it hurt. She thought of Ryan, too. Did he care? Had he even tried to find out how she was after the ambulance took her away? Part of her hoped he hadn't. If she was honest, she knew she'd never stop loving him, even when she hated what he'd become. But hope had become her worst enemy, the little voice that kept insisting he would realize his mistake and come back for her. Instead, her phone sat silent on the bedside table, battery dying, with no missed calls. Not from Ryan. Not from anyone. It was almost a relief when a soft knock came at her door and a familiar face appeared. Alex, her older brother, stepped in quietly, concern etched deep in his eyes. He was a figure out of her childhood, a man who'd drifted from her life years ago, lost to business and pride. He had always been the success story. The one who made millions in finance, who rarely called, who sent birthday cards signed with just his initials. Emily was sure he'd forgotten her, or at least forgotten how to be a brother. Now he looked older, a little tired, but determined. He didn't say anything at first. He just sat at her bedside and took her hand in his. She was surprised by how good it felt, how solid and real. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Alex finally broke the silence. "I saw what happened at the wedding," he said, his voice low. "Someone sent me the video." He paused, his jaw tight. "I should have been there for you sooner. I'm sorry, Em." Emily swallowed, fighting the urge to cry. "Why are you here now?" she asked, unable to keep the edge out of her voice. "You left. You always leave." Alex nodded, accepting her anger. "I deserve that. I was selfish, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. I want to help. Please, let me. She wanted to refuse. Pride and pain tangled inside her, twisting into stubbornness. She had survived this long without charity, and she didn't want to start now. But exhaustion won. What can you possibly do? She whispered, her voice raw. Alex squeezed her hand. Whatever you need. A place to live, a job, money, anything. Just say the word. He hesitated, then added, I know things have been impossible. I have resources, Em. Let me use them for you. The offer hung in the air. Emily's instinct was to say no, to hold on to her independence, even if it meant sinking further. But the look in Alex's eyes was genuine, filled with the guilt of a brother who had failed but wanted to try again. She looked down at her hands, fingers trembling. I just want to feel safe, she admitted quietly. For me and the baby. That's all. Alex nodded. You will. I promise. He leaned forward, resting his forehead gently against hers. You don't have to do this alone anymore. Later, after Alex left to arrange for her discharge, Emily lay back and stared at the ceiling. She thought of all the versions of herself that had vanished. Ryan's wife, the hopeful teacher, the girl with dreams, and wondered who she was now. Grief threatened to swallow her, but something inside her held steady. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe it was survival, or maybe it was the first spark of something new. The beginning of believing that rock bottom wasn't the end, but the place from which she would rise. Outside her window, the city moved on. She heard a baby cry in the hallway, nurses laughing at the desk, the steady rhythm of life continuing without her. Emily closed her eyes and pictured her baby's face, unknown but fiercely loved, and for the first time in a long while, she let herself hope that tomorrow could be different. What she didn't know was that the worst pain would soon give way to an unexpected twist. One that would reveal her greatest strength and force everyone, even Ryan and Vanessa, to see her in a whole new light. The morning after Emily's hospital discharge was fresh and cold, the city waking up around her as she stepped from the cab, cradling a small hospital bag and the weight of her shattered pride. Alex walked beside her, not saying much, just offering quiet support as he led her into a building she had never noticed before. A beautiful old brownstone, freshly renovated but with the charm of something timeless. This is yours now, Alex said softly, handing her a set of keys. Or at least, as long as you want it to be. No strings. I bought it for you years ago, but I was waiting for the right time. Emily was too tired to argue. She stepped inside, letting the warmth and safety settle into her bones. She realized, almost painfully, how long it had been since she felt this secure. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe she might actually survive this, maybe even start over. But it wasn't long before her world tilted again, this time in ways she could never have predicted. As she sat by the window that afternoon, drinking tea and listening to the sounds of the city, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. A voice, anxious but determined, came through. Emily? It's Julia, from the catering company. Listen, there's something you should know. After what happened at the wedding, things got messy. Someone leaked your medical info to the press. Emily's stomach dropped. What? Page 6 has your name, the pregnancy, everything. And Ryan Mitchell's camp is trying to control the story. They're spinning it, making you sound unstable. Julia's voice trembled. I thought you should know. I'm so sorry. Emily's hands shook as she hung up. Her privacy, her last shred of dignity, was gone. She opened her email and found dozens of messages. Reporters demanding comments, strangers offering support or spewing hate, her former school asking her not to return. A viral video of her collapse was already circulating online. The shame felt infinite. That evening, Alex found her sobbing in the kitchen. He listened, arms folded, face stone cold. When she finished, he handed her an envelope. This is from my attorney. I had them run a check on Ryan's company and Vanessa. There are things you need to see. Emily opened the envelope, her hands trembling. What she found inside made her heart pound, not just with fear, but with the first flicker of righteous anger. Financial documents, emails, private memos, evidence that Vanessa had been quietly sabotaging Emily for months, pulling strings with the catering agency, blacklisting her from jobs, even spreading false rumors to ensure Emily's isolation. Worse, Vanessa had paid reporters to dig for dirt, to embarrass Emily at every turn, to make her look unstable in the eyes of the public and the courts. Alex's voice was gentle but firm. She thought you were weak. They both did. But they made a mistake. I'm not just your brother, Em. I'm also one of the largest investors in Ryan's company, and I can make things very, very uncomfortable for both of them. Emily stared at him, the reality sinking in. She wasn't powerless anymore, not with Alex in her corner, not with evidence on her side. For the first time, she felt something harden inside her, a resolve that had nothing to do with anger or revenge, and everything to do with survival. She would not let her child grow up ashamed of who their mother was. She would not let Ryan or Vanessa control her story. The next day, Emily put on her bravest face and walked into Alex's law firm downtown. In a private conference room, surrounded by lawyers and piles of documents, she made a statement. She wasn't just defending her own name, she was protecting her baby, her future. Alex's team was relentless. They drafted legal letters, prepared press releases, and coordinated with a PR firm to share the truth. Emily had been harassed, bullied, and professionally sabotaged, not by chance, but by design. The response was swift and unexpected. Suddenly, the headlines changed. The unstable ex-wife became the mother fighting back. Messages of support flooded in. Old friends reappeared, and even some of Ryan's former colleagues reached out privately, offering to testify to Vanessa's manipulation. Emily's social media filled with women sharing their own stories of betrayal and resilience. What started as a scandal became a movement. Meanwhile, Ryan's world began to unravel. His investors, alarmed by the negative press and Alex's subtle threats to pull out, demanded explanations. Vanessa, exposed and humiliated, tried to spin the story, but her allies began to disappear. Ryan, facing public shame and possible financial ruin, finally tried to reach Emily. He called, texted, even sent flowers to the brownstone. She ignored every attempt. But the most unexpected visitor was Vanessa herself. She showed up at Emily's door, her composure cracked for the first time. "You win," she said, voice tight with resentment. "Ryan's leaving me. The board wants me out. I just wanted to say, you're tougher than you look." Emily didn't gloat. She simply closed the door. That night, Emily lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had changed. She no longer felt alone. She had her brother, her unborn child, her story, and now the chance to shape her own future. She realized the secret wasn't just about the evidence or the money. It was about believing in her own worth, even when the world tried to tell her otherwise. For the first time in a long time, Emily slept soundly. The worst was behind her. The next chapter, she decided, would belong to her. The following weeks passed in a blur, but for the first time in almost a year, Emily felt energy returning to her bones. The brownstone was more than just a roof over her head. It was a sanctuary where she could finally start to heal. With Alex's support, she could rest, focus on her pregnancy, and for the first time, allow herself to dream about something better than mere survival. Alex introduced her to a team of professionals, a gentle OB/GYN who specialized in high-stress pregnancies, a nutritionist who brought groceries and meal plans, and even a therapist who visited once a week. Emily, who had always been fiercely independent, struggled at first to accept so much help. But as the days passed, she realized that accepting support wasn't weakness. It was what her child needed, and what she deserved too. One day, Alex sat her down at the kitchen table, sliding a folder toward her. "I want you to join my company. You have a gift, Em, your art, your empathy. I've set up a charitable foundation under your name. You'll run it however you want. Help at-risk mothers, fund arts education, sponsor programs for women starting over. I'll provide the seed money, but you'll be in charge. This is your chance to do things on your terms." For a moment, Emily was stunned. She'd spent so long shrinking herself, hiding in the background, that the idea of leading something, of mattering, felt foreign. She hesitated. "What if I mess it up?" she whispered. Alex smiled. "You can't mess it up. Just do it with your heart, like you've always done everything." Inspired, Emily took the offer. She threw herself into the project, learning everything she could about non-profit management, grant writing, and community outreach. She reconnected with old friends, built a team, and started meeting with women who'd experienced trauma and betrayal like hers. She listened, comforted, and showed them that starting over wasn't just possible, it was powerful. With her new role came a new sense of purpose. She ditched the old staff uniform and filled her closet with comfortable but elegant clothes. She even let herself enjoy small luxuries again. Fresh flowers for the kitchen, cozy throws for the couch, art supplies to sketch in her free time. Her body changed too. Her pregnancy, once a source of shame and anxiety, now became a symbol of hope. She attended prenatal yoga classes, shared laughter with other moms-to-be, and let the anticipation of her child's arrival fill her days with light. But the transformation wasn't just internal. As news spread about Emily's work, the local media began to notice. A popular women's magazine asked for an interview, and soon her story was everywhere. Not as a cautionary tale, but as an example of courage and resilience. Social media lit up with women sharing their own experiences, tagging Emily Strong and thanking her for her honesty. At first, Emily was shy about the attention, but the messages she received changed her mind. One mother wrote, "Because of you, I left my abuser and found shelter for me and my kids." Another woman said, "You made me believe in myself again." Emily realized that her story, her pain, her fall, and her comeback wasn't just hers. It was universal. The world was full of women forced to rebuild from nothing, and if her journey could make that path a little less lonely for someone else, it was worth every bruise. Meanwhile, as Emily rose, Vanessa's hold over Ryan and his company crumbled. Board members cited Alex's threat to pull investment, but that was just the beginning. Investors demanded accountability, and after weeks of negative press, Vanessa was ousted from all her leadership roles. Without her, Ryan's world spun out of control. Lawsuits, rumors, plummeting stock prices. He faced consequences for the first time, and suddenly the people who'd once praised his ambition now questioned his judgment. Emily didn't celebrate Vanessa's fall or Ryan's struggles. She had moved past the need for revenge. The real victory was her own growth. When Ryan, finally humbled, reached out asking to meet, she agreed. Not for reconciliation, but for closure. They met at a quiet cafe, far from paparazzi or gawkers. Ryan looked older, the weight of regret etched in the lines of his face. He apologized, sincerely and without excuses, for the pain he caused. "I lost myself," he admitted. "You were the best thing in my life, and I threw it away." Emily listened with compassion but didn't waver. "I loved you, Ryan, but I love myself now too, and I have to put my child first." He nodded, accepting her decision. As they parted, Emily felt relief. There were no more ghosts, no more unfinished business. The past would always be part of her story, but it no longer controlled her future. In the months that followed, Emily's foundation grew. She appeared at charity galas, not as someone's plus one, but as an honored guest, a woman respected for her vision and grit. She received standing ovations for her speeches, was invited onto panels, and became a role model for women everywhere who needed proof that even the deepest wounds could heal. On the day her baby was born, a perfect, healthy girl with her mother's eyes and her father's smile, Emily wept with gratitude. Alex stood beside her, holding the tiny infant and promising to be the best uncle in the world. Emily named her Hope, a reminder that out of heartbreak and chaos, something beautiful could grow. Looking out the window of her brownstone, Emily watched the city bustle below. She'd come so far, lost so much, but had rebuilt herself from the ashes. The scars remained, but they were proof of survival, not shame. She had a future again, and for the first time in a long while, she looked forward to tomorrow. The boardroom was silent, the kind of heavy, watchful silence that only falls when everything is on the line. Ryan sat at the end of the long table, his once confident posture replaced by the uneasy slump of a man who had lost more than he ever realized he could. The windows behind him showed a sweeping view of the city. His city, or at least it had been, before ambition and arrogance cost him nearly everything. In the weeks since Vanessa's exposure and the avalanche of negative headlines, Ryan's life had become a never-ending damage control session. Investors, rattled by rumors and Alex's quiet threats to withdraw millions, demanded transparency and accountability. Former friends kept their distance. Employees walked on eggshells, uncertain of their futures. Lawsuits began to pile up as regulators sniffed around. The honeymoon was over. The reckoning had arrived. Alex had made his terms clear. If Vanessa was allowed to remain in any position of influence, either in the company or in Ryan's life, Alex and a syndicate of key investors would pull out, gutting the business and possibly leaving Ryan bankrupt. The message was delivered in private, but worded so sharply there was no mistaking its seriousness. You want to keep your empire. You let go of the poison that nearly destroyed it. For days, Ryan had avoided making a decision, holding out hope that Vanessa would find some way to manipulate her way back into favor. But Vanessa, for all her cunning, had finally run out of moves. Her last-ditch effort, a threat to release embarrassing information about Ryan's personal life, fell flat when Alex calmly revealed he'd already seen and neutralized it. The board, sensing weakness, made it clear Vanessa had to go. The final confrontation happened late one night in Ryan's penthouse, the city twinkling outside, the room filled with the cold glow of reality. Vanessa paced the living room, her face hard, her voice sharp. "They're just jealous of us," she spat. "They never respected me. You can't let them win." Ryan, tired and beaten down, shook his head. "It's not about them, Vanessa. It's about everything we did to Emily. It's about everything I let you do to her and to this company. I'm done choosing you over what's right." For the first time, Vanessa's mask slipped. There was a flicker of desperation, real fear in her eyes. "You'll regret this, Ryan. I made you. I can destroy you." He didn't answer. He simply opened the door, silent and steady, and watched as she gathered her things and stormed out, slamming the door behind her for good. The next day, Ryan called an emergency board meeting. He apologized for his failures, announced Vanessa's removal from all positions, and accepted every condition Alex and the investors set forth. Then, in a move that made the front page of every business publication in America, he offered to step down as CEO. The board declined, barely, citing his willingness to take responsibility, but his power was gone. He was, for the first time, a humbled leader. But Ryan's greatest reckoning was not with the board or his employees. It was with himself. And with Emily. Word spread quickly that he was no longer with Vanessa, that he was changing course, making amends. But forgiveness wasn't his to demand or expect. He wanted only one thing: to apologize face to face, without cameras or contracts, just man to woman. He reached out to Alex first, asking if Emily would see him. The answer was a cautious yes, with clear boundaries. Emily agreed to meet him at the foundation's office, in a sunlit conference room lined with children's artwork and stacks of donation boxes. She sat at the head of the table now, confident and calm, a world away from the woman who had once waited for Ryan to come home. He walked in quietly, nerves buzzing. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. "I'm sorry, Emily. I know that doesn't fix anything. I was blind. I let ambition destroy us. And I let Vanessa, let myself hurt you in ways I'll regret for the rest of my life." Emily listened, her eyes clear but not cold. "You hurt me," she said simply. "But you also hurt yourself. You lost sight of who you were. I hope you find him again, Ryan. Not for me or even for our child, but for yourself." Ryan's breath caught. "I want to be part of her life, if you'll let me." Emily nodded. "You can, but it's on my terms. No games, no manipulation. She's my priority. You'll have to earn her trust and mine. Not with money or apologies, but with actions." He nodded, grateful for the chance, even if it was only a sliver of hope. Afterward, Ryan called a press conference. Reporters jammed the lobby, hungry for scandal or redemption. He stood in front of the cameras and for the first time told the whole truth. He admitted his failures, explained the wrongs done to Emily, and announced he was donating half his personal fortune to the foundation she now led. "I built my empire on the backs of people who believed in me, especially Emily. I lost myself, and in trying to have it all, I lost what mattered most. I can't change the past, but I can help others who've fallen and are trying to rise again. This is my first step." The story was everywhere. Some called it a publicity stunt. Others saw it as a man finally growing up. Emily didn't care about the headlines. She cared about the peace she found knowing she'd survived, and that she was now strong enough to choose her own path. That night, after Hope had fallen asleep in her crib, Emily stood by the window and watched the city lights. She thought of all the choices, good and bad, that had led her here. Ryan's heartbreak, Vanessa's defeat, Alex's loyalty, each part of her story, but no longer defining her. She was her own woman, her child's champion, her future's author, and for the first time she realized that was enough. The months that followed, Ryan's public reckoning, were marked not by grand gestures or scandalous headlines, but by something quieter and far more powerful: renewal. The story that had begun with a collapse on a ballroom floor now lived on in whispered hope, in the quiet victories of every woman who watched, every man who listened, and every child who would someday ask what it means to truly begin again. Emily's life was unrecognizable from the days she'd spent hiding in shame. The brownstone was now a home, bright with color and filled with laughter. The foundation she ran had blossomed, funding art programs for underprivileged children, sponsoring job training for single mothers, providing safe housing for women escaping violence. Every day, new faces appeared in her office: survivors, dreamers, people who had lost everything and were ready to rebuild. The walls of her office were lined with children's paintings and thank you notes, tokens of lives transformed. She kept her daughter's first drawing, nothing but a swirl of purple crayon, in a gold frame above her desk, a reminder of how beauty could grow from the messiest beginnings. Hope, her daughter, was growing fast. She had Ryan's smile, but Emily's steady eyes. She toddled through the foundation's halls, giggling as volunteers chased after her. The staff called her the little boss. Emily brought her everywhere, proud to be a mother who could show her child what strength looked like. Alex remained a fixture in their lives, no longer a distant presence but a true brother, uncle, and friend. He and Emily shared dinners, laughter, and even disagreements about how best to spend the foundation's resources. Alex surprised everyone, maybe even himself, by discovering that giving back felt better than any business deal ever had. Ryan, for his part, changed in quieter ways. He began working with the foundation, not as a leader, but as a volunteer. He tutored teens in coding, helped at fundraising events, and attended parenting classes alongside other single dads. He never asked Emily for forgiveness or for a second chance. He simply tried, day after day, to be the father Hope deserved and the man he wished he'd been all along. It wasn't always easy. There were nights when Emily lay awake, haunted by the memories of her darkest hours, afraid the world would judge her for her scars. There were days when Ryan faltered, when Alex grew frustrated, when the work felt endless and the progress slow. But there was always the promise of tomorrow. Emily's transformation didn't go unnoticed. She was invited to speak at conferences, to consult for national nonprofits, to share her journey on talk shows and podcasts. She never shied away from her past, never hid the truth of what she'd endured. Every woman has a breaking point, she told her audiences, but what matters most is how we put ourselves back together. At one sold-out gala, standing in a shimmering blue dress before hundreds of guests, Emily delivered a speech that would go viral across the world. "When I lost everything, I thought it was the end," she began, her voice steady but soft. "But falling apart was the beginning of finding my true self. I learned that dignity isn't something anyone else gives us. It's something we claim for ourselves every single day." She paused, meeting the eyes of dozens of women in the audience, some wiping away tears. "I want every woman watching to know, you are not weak because you were betrayed. You are not lesser because you struggled. The world will try to write your story for you, will call you names, will try to reduce you to your worst moment. But you can take back your power. You can choose who you become. I did, and so can you." Thunderous applause filled the room, but Emily didn't bask in it. She simply smiled, thinking of the long, hard road behind her and the bright, open path ahead. In the weeks after that speech, donations poured into the foundation. Survivors from across the country wrote letters, telling their stories and offering thanks. Some of them had walked away from toxic relationships. Others had started businesses, enrolled in college, or simply found the courage to ask for help. Emily read every letter, her heart swelling with pride, not just for herself, but for all the women who had learned to stand up again. Vanessa, once the queen of the social scene, faded into obscurity. Some said she moved abroad, others claimed she'd reinvented herself elsewhere. Emily never bothered to keep track. The lesson was clear. Real power doesn't come from status or wealth. It comes from truth, kindness, and resilience. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the foundation's windows, Emily watched Hope finger painting in the playroom. Paint streaked across her cheeks, laughter bubbling up like a song. Alex walked in, coffee in hand, and sat beside Emily. They watched Hope together, silent for a moment. "You know," Alex said. None of us end up where we expect. But this is better than anything I ever planned. Emily nodded, her heart full. Me too. I never thought I'd be grateful for all the pain. But it brought me here. It made me strong. She looked out over the city, the skyline glowing as dusk fell. Somewhere, someone else was beginning again, picking up the pieces, hoping for a better tomorrow. Her voice was soft but resolute as she whispered, "No woman is weak who finds her voice and her worth." And with that, Emily stepped forward into her future, her dignity unbreakable, her spirit unbowed, her story a beacon for everyone still fighting to rise. So the story has ended, our wonderful friends. Are you still here with us? If you've watched until now, it means something in this story touched your heart. And I want to thank you for sharing this journey. What happened to Emily shows us that no matter how dark things get, you can rebuild from the ashes. Life isn't about never falling, it's about what you do after the fall. As heterodoxism teaches, healing doesn't mean the damage never existed, it means the damage no longer controls your life. Emily's journey proves that your worth isn't defined by other people's opinions, your past mistakes, or even your heartbreaks. True dignity is something you claim for yourself, step by step, day by day. If you're standing at your lowest right now, remember, you have the power to choose who you become next. If you felt inspired, please like, share, and subscribe, and let me know in the comments how this story spoke to you. You're not alone. This channel is here for you, always.